I'm Bill Gralnick. I'm retired from several occupations, and I'm now a full-time writer. One of those occupations was working for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, during which time I was asked to reformulate the chaplaincy for the eighth largest sheriff's office in the country.
You have a gift for being a neutral party that is able to bring people together in the same room, people that have different faith backgrounds, sometimes conflicting, and getting groups to talk to each other, to work together. Where did you get this? Does it come in part from your Jewish faith?
Well, I would say being a Jew from Brooklyn is part of the equation, because if you're a Jew in Brooklyn, you're exposed to the length and breadth of both America's ethnicity and America's religiosity. So that was a big help. I've also always been a very good listener, in part because my mother was a sincere believer that little pictures should be seen and not heard. When you listen, you learn a tremendous amount, rather than when you're talking, when you're learning nothing. The combination of that, I think, was extremely helpful. And then sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. My first posting was in Atlanta. The Archbishop in Atlanta had arrived just a few years before I did, and he was from the Bronx. At that time, Jews were 1/10 of 1% of the population. Catholics were 3%. So he felt as isolated as I did, and we hit it off. He was a conservative bishop, but on the other hand, being from the Bronx, he had many of the same experiences I did. And to make a long story short, I had some amazing experiences with him. He trusted me and introduced me to all of the bishops in his province, and before I knew it, I was developing programs with bishops in 6 different states and learning their positions, especially vis-a-vis living in states where the overwhelming majority of people were either Baptist or Southern Methodist. And when I left Atlanta and was posted in Miami, he wrote me a letter of introduction to the Archbishop of Miami, and now I had a whole other set of things to listen about, particularly Latino things. A great many Latinos have converted to various forms of evangelical Christianity. We began getting involved in Catholic evangelical dialogues and Catholic Jewish evangelical dialogues, and the Archbishop appointed me to be part of the welcoming committee for the visit of the Pope to Miami. And when I came up here to Palm Beach County, I suggested to the sheriff to have a chaplaincy that represents the faith experiences not only of the police department, the sheriff's department, but of the county. He knew I had 35 or 40 years of volunteer experience with police departments. I understood the culture. I understood, by and large, what makes cops tick. As is often the case with a good idea, he says to the person who brought it to him, "Good idea, do it." So that's how I got to be the supervisor of the chaplaincy. And long story short, we had, I think, 3 chaplains. When I left, we had 37 chaplains. We had Roman Catholic priests. We had a Greek Orthodox priest. We had rabbis from all 3 major denominations of Judaism. We had several evangelical pastors, so on and so forth. My crowning achievement, so to speak, was finding an imam. He was American-born, he was well-known, and he was African-American. His acceptance was very quick once he got up and going.
You have a gift for bringing people together in the same room, getting them talking together, people from various faith backgrounds, sometimes groups that are in conflict of some kind. What was it that you brought to that room that made that happen?
Well, the very first thing, Philip, that's critically important is knowing why those people came together. And my recommendation to them, assuming that they better understand one another, is to put together a structured program. It's very important not to let people just jump into the pool. Bad things can happen when you do that. So What has been successful for me is setting up year-long dialogue groups where the people who participate are vetted, if you will, by their priest or pastor or rabbi. They make a commitment that short of some emergency, they are going to attend every single session. You leave plenty of time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers, and you make sure you leave time for coffee and cake and networking. So there's a program here that I started almost 30 years ago that's still going. One of the, quote, problems that we had with it was after 3 or 4 years, all these people were friends. They didn't have any disagreements. We moved on to a different structure. We did the same thing with the religious school teachers that we were doing with the congregants. That was a tremendous breakthrough. You know, we have Jewish kids from one synagogue who have attended Mass, who have attended Sunday school at the church across the street, Catholic kids who have been to Shabbat services, been to the religious school at the synagogue. You know, I still meet people in the supermarket or on the street who say, you know, it changed my life. Absolutely changed me as a human being.
That's wonderful.
When somebody says that to you, when somebody says you accomplished helping me become a better person, I don't think a finer compliment a person can receive.
Absolutely. I want to ask you this one thing. One of the things that you've been able to do over your professional life is bring people together. What advice would you have for the United States? We seem to be talking over each other or venting online without the ability to talk about the issues. We don't even really know what it is that we're disagreeing about. We just know that we hate each other's guts. And it is soul-crushing to see people who should be getting along. You know what I'm talking about?
I certainly do. I grew up in the New York of Jacob Javits and John Lindsay, Robert Wagner, where politics is people, definitionally. And there was no such thing as ipso facto, you're wrong. Politics was both art and science, and it was the politics that I studied as a political science major in college. What has happened in the last 3.5 years is so bad that if we don't correct it, it may be uncorrectable. We may have to hopefully outgrow it. We used to believe, it didn't turn out to be true, that an anti-Semite would have children who would then be less anti-Semitic than their parents, and then they would have children, and those children would be less anti-Semitic than their grandparents. God help us if that's what we're counting on to get us out of the mess we're in right now. I'm not sure the structures of our democracy, which really are built on a wing and a prayer. I don't know how strong they are if somebody really puts their shoulder in and pushes them. I'm not much more optimistic than you are. Given the opportunity, I think I have suggestions that would help.
Well, give me a couple before we hang up here.
I would use the same techniques that I use in interfaith work. You really have to take people, out of their setting and put them in a neutral area and commit them to learn about the other. It's not that you're giving up what you believe in. It's that you're understanding what the other person believes in. And if you both understand each other in that manner, then you can have an intelligent conversation about making something happen that won't hurt either of you and likely will help to some degree both of you.
And it's all been made incredibly more complicated with a virus.
Can you believe it? How do you get people together when you can't get people together? If you go for the hardest core of them, so you let them all come together without masks, and now you're responsible for their health. At the moment, it's impossible. I love being able to connect on Zoom, but when you're trying to get people to learn about each other, you've got to have human contact.
We'll leave it at that for now. As always, it's wonderful to speak with you.
Always here.
Bye-bye, Bill.
Bye.